Hi friends, my name is Kayla Rayne, and today I'm sharing with you my monthly recommendations for the month of September, where we are focusing on required reading. So this is a theme that is kind of up to interpretation. So you can either share books that were required reading and you just really enjoyed in school, or, like myself, books that you think should be required reading in school that you just wish schools would teach in their curriculum, whether at the middle school, high school, or college level. And I have a few books to share with you today that I am so excited about. But monthly recommendations is a Goodreads group that I started with my good friend Trina over at Between Chapters, and I'll leave links in the down bar below for our page and her channel, and you should totally check that out. So the first book that I absolutely think should definitely be on curriculums in high school, at least, is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. This book was so fantastic. It follows two different storylines, and there are a couple of other storylines peppered throughout the story. But this particular one follows two main characters who are on very different paths, but their paths collide. So one character is trying to figure out how she's going to stay in the country as she is working with an immigration lawyer to not get deported by the end of the day, and then the other main character is deciding what he wants to do with the rest of his life and if he's going to go against his family's expectations or do what he loves. And this has so many fantastic themes and just educational points that I think that this would be such a rich text to study in school, because you have those coming of age elements in here in the story with two different characters that I think would be really great. And then you also have discussion about immigration and family and culture, and I just need every teenager to have their hands on this book, and I really wish that it was taught in schools. The next book that I have is More Happy Than Not by Silvera. I know that this book is kind of hit or miss for some people, but I think that the overall exploration of sexuality and poverty in this book are so fantastic. So whether you truly love this book or we're just kind of middle of the road, at least those themes were explored really, really well. And I think that's something that is so important to study, especially with a critical eye, looking at themes of sexuality and poverty in books, because we just don't get it that much, especially poverty, and when it's intersected with a teenager who identifies somewhere on the queer spectrum. I think that that's really important to explore those themes and actually have representation of that, and I think that Silvera did a fantastic job in this. There's also mental health representation in here that's really important. There is suicidal ideation, and there is a character who completes suicide, and I think that discussion is really important on both the high school and college level. So I would love to see classes actually teach this one, because it is an excellent, excellent book, and it deserves to be picked apart in a good way, like in a classroom. Then I have The Hate You Give by Angie. This really doesn't need an explanation, but I'm going to give you one. So this particular book follows the storyline of a main character after she sees her best friend murdered by a police officer, and it has discussions on race and police brutality and family and first loves and coming of age, and just everything is packed into this novel so beautifully. And I think that this is something that, even though it's not on reading lists now, it is going to be one day. This is going to be one of those books that we look back on and see that it had such an influence on young adults, and it will become a classic. It will be a classic, but it needs to be read now. So get your hands on it. The next book I have might be a little surprising, because it's like fantasy, and it's no, Kayla Rayne, why should fantasies be required reading? But this book, oh my gosh, this book does so many wonderful things. So Every Heart a Doorway by McGuire is such a fantastic book that just explores so many different things like sexuality, gender norms, murder, that's in here too. But this book is so good, and I just feel like everyone should read it. It is such a short novel. Obviously, I don't have the book here. This is just a book cover. But it's tiny, But there's so much story in here and so much you can learn from this novel that I just really, really want everyone to read it because it's fantastic. And I loved it so much. And again, like one of my favorite things about this book, and then its sequel as well, is it does such a great job of exploring gender norms and breaking down those boundaries, and explores sexuality in such a subtle way that I think is really great for readers who don't necessarily want it up front and center like a coming out story, but they still want that representation. Like right here, it's in this book and it's so good. And the last book that I have to recommend that I think should be required reading is George by Alex Gino. I don't have it in my hands right now. It's like across the room. I'm not gonna go grab it. But this book is so excellent. I think it does such a great job of introducing young readers to a transgender main character, and that's so important because there are so many young children out there who don't have the words to describe how they feel about themselves and their identity, and then there are children who obviously they have that representation, they know how they identify, and they've always had something to like represent them somewhere in media. It's important for them to know that not everyone is exactly like them, and that's okay. So this particular book I think should be taught at every level, so young readers, middle school, high school, and college, because some of us just don't, we just don't get on board for a very long time. So this is one of those books that I think has value for every age level, and does such a great job of introducing characters in such a natural way to a transgender main character. George is such a wonderful book, and I loved it so much, so I wanted to put it on this list. Anyway, that has been it for today's video. As usual, I will leave links in the down bar below for y'all to check out my other social media sites, such as Goodreads, Instagram, and Twitter, and the info for our Goodreads group and Trina's channel will be down there as well. That's it for today's video. Thank y'all so much for watching. Stay weird.